Dear children, a warm welcome to class 6 student. Today I am teaching you class 6 history lesson number 4, what books and burials tells us. In your previous class you read about the evolution of man, how from a food gatherer and hunter he became a food cultivator and started to lead a settled life. After the decline of the Indus civilization, a new culture and civilization emerged in India with the coming of the Aryans. This civilization developed in the northwestern part of India and spread gradually to the rest. This came to be known as the Vedic civilization. After this, we will take about the Aryans. Children, can you tell me who were the Aryans? Yes, the Aryan people who arrived in India were probably from Central Asia. Aryans migrated to different parts of the world. Why? Because in search for fertile pastoral lands or maybe due to an increase in population. Some of Aryans people moved to Syria, Mesopotamia and the Middle East. Some moved towards Europe while some came to India. Do you know, children, who were Indo-Aryans? Yes, the group that came to India is known as the Indo-Aryans. After Indo-Aryans, next about the Vedic age. In Indian history, the period between 1500 to 500 BCE is often referred to as the Vedic age, as most of the information of this period comes from the Vedic literature. Do you know, children, Vedic is divided into how many parts? Yes, good. The Vedic age can be divided into the early Vedic age and the later Vedic age. The literature includes the four Vedas. Which are they, students? They are the Puranas, the Brahmanas, the Aranyakas, the Upanishads and the epics, the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. After this, about the Vedic age, the Vedas. Children, have you heard about Vedas? Good. The Vedas, which are among the world's oldest religious scriptures, are the sacred text of the Hindus. Vedas are the most important source of the information about the Aryans. Not only the students, but also Vedas give us information about the Vedic age, about the daily life of the people, about their religious belief, etc. The term Veda is derived from the root Ved, which means to know. Thus, the term Veda means knowledge. How many types of Vedas are there? 4. Good. There are 4 main Vedas. Which are they? They are the Rig Veda, Samaveda, Yajur Veda and Atharva Veda. So first we will take Rig Veda. Among these, the Rig Veda is the oldest. It was composed some 3500 years ago. It contains 1028 hymns which were called suktas, meaning well said. These hymns or praise are in praise of various gods and goddesses. Some of the important gods mentioned in the Rig Veda are Agni, god of fire; Indra, god of storm, rain and war; Varun, the sky god. These hymns were composed by sages. The Rig Veda was not in written form but was passed on orally. The Vedic teachers taught the students to recite and memorize each word, syllable and sentence correctly and with great care. The Rig Veda is divided into 10 mandalas. Mandalas meaning books. After the Rig Veda, we will take next one, that is Samaveda. The Samaveda is mostly a rearrangement of the Rig Veda for musical rendering. This means that the hymns of the Rig Veda were arranged with pauses and repetitions to show how it was supposed to sound when recited out loud musically. After Samaveda, third one, that is Yajur Veda. The Yajur Veda comprises of sacrificial prayers for certain religious rituals. Last one, the Atharva Veda. The Atharva Veda consists of charms, incantations and magical spells and is quite different from the other three Vedas. After this topic, next topic is how historians study the Rig Veda. The main field that leads the investigation is history, the study of the past. History isn't just about events that no one alive remembers. It is both the distant and recent past. A battle that happened 5,000 years ago and an election that happened yesterday are both part of history. Historians are people who study history. Historians are very curious about the past. They want to know who did what. They want to know how, when, where and why people did what they did. The books we use are written and printed. Historians like archaeologists find out about the past, but in addition to material remains, they examine written sources as well. Let us see, children, how they study the Rig Veda. Some of the hymns in the Rig Veda are in the form of dialogues. This is part of one such hymn, a dialogue between a sage named Vishwamitra and two rivers, Bias and Sutlej, that were worshipped as goddesses. After this, we will take next topic, that is the early Vedic age. Children, can you tell me where did the people of the early Vedic age live? Yes, the early Vedic people lived in the Sapta Sindhu region, present-day Haryana and undivided Punjab. This region had 7 rivers: Indus, Jhelum, Chenab, Ravi, Biyas, Sutlaj and Saraswati, hence the name Sapta Sindhu. Most of the information of the early Vedic age comes from the Rig Veda. Therefore, this period is also referred to as the Rig Vedic period. After this, the early Vedic age political life. In the early Vedic period, there were many kinds of people living in the subcontinent, like the hunter-gatherers, forest dwellers, pastoralists or cattle herders, peasants and later towns people. Cattle, horses and chariots. There are many prayers in the Rig Veda for cattle, children and horses. Horses were yoked to chariots that were used in battles which were fought to capture cattle. Battles were also fought for land which was important for pasture and for growing hardy crops that ripened quickly, such as barley. Some battles were fought for water and to capture people. Some of the wealth that was obtained was kept by the leaders, some was given to the priest, and the rest was distributed amongst the people. Some wealth was used for the performance of the yajnas or sacrifices, in which offerings were made into the fire. After this, next one, words to describe people during the early Vedic period. Children, can you tell me which words they use to describe different types of people? Yes, very good. There are several ways of describing people in terms of the work they do, the language they speak, the place they belong to, their family, their communities, and cultural practices. Let us see, students, some of the words used to describe people found in the Rig Veda. There are two groups who are described in terms of their work. The priest, sometimes called Brahmins, who performed various rituals, and the second one, the Rajas. The tribal chief or king was called Rajan. He received voluntary gifts in kind. He did not take any tax but had a larger share when riches were divided. He led his tribe to war, maintained law and order, and also offered prayers on behalf of his tribe. After this, next one, Jana or wish. Now, two words were used to describe the people or the community as a whole. The Aryans were pastoralists and were divided into tribes called Jana or wish. One was the word Jana, which we still use in Hindi and other languages. The other was wish. The word Vashya comes from wish. Several wish or Jana are mentioned by name. So we find reference to the Puru Jana or wish, the Bharta Jana or wish, the Yadu Jana or wish, and so on. After Jana or wish, next one, Dasas. There was also another class of people called the Dasas. The term Dasas initially meant people of different cultures. Later on, dasas were used to mean slaves. They were men and women who were captured in war and were treated as the personal property of their owners, who could make them do whatever work they wanted. After this dasa, understanding culture through graves and burials, the story of the megaliths. Now see children, this word megaliths meaning big stones. At many places in the Deccan, South India, the northeast and the northwest, especially Kashmir, huge stone boulders have been found. These boulders are generally arranged in a circular pattern. These were used to mark graves or burial sites. These stone boulders are called megaliths. The megaliths have some features. First feature, megaliths burial were underground and megaliths were placed on the surface to mark the burial spot. Second feature children, many objects have been found in the graves including human skeletons, pottery, agricultural tools, weapons and ornaments. Not only this, but agricultural tools have also been found. Those meant for hunting, however, are more in number. This suggests that though the megalith people practiced agriculture and they depended more on hunting, the graves also contain a large number of pots. In some areas, pots filled with ashes and charred bones have been found. Some graves contain fragments of rice and other grains. So we know that people cultivated grains. Objects found in the graves indicate the buried person's position in the tribe. The graves that contain a large number of pots and ornaments probably belong to those who were either rich or important in society. After this, next one we will take Inam Gao, a Chalcolithic settlement. This is the last topic of this lesson. In Maharashtra, one of the largest Chalcolithic settlement in India. Here the dead were generally buried in pits dug in the floor of the houses. The adults were laid out straight in a north-south positions with their heads facing north. Vessels that probably contained food and water were buried with the dead. The children were buried in urn-like containers. One of the burials had the body buried in a large four-legged clay jar. The remains suggest that the people of Inamgarh grew wheat, barley, rice, millets, pulses, peas and sesame and collected fruits such as jujube, bear, Indian gooseberry, amla, jamun, dates and a variety of berries. Animals like cattle, buffalo, deer, sheep goat, dog, etc. were known to them. So now next one, decline of Inam Gaon. In the last phase of the settlement, the people of Inamgaon seem to have been facing problems. There was a decline in farming which may have been due to a shortage of rainfall or a decrease in the fertility of the soil. People began relying more on hunting and gathering food. There was also a change in the way houses were constructed. Instead of rectangular houses, we find small circular huts. So children, I hope you all understood lesson number 4, that is what books and burials tell us. So now we will recap to sum up. The period between 1500 to 500 BCE is often referred to as the Vedic age, as most of the information of this period comes from the Vedic literature. The Vedas, which are among the world's oldest religious scriptures, are the sacred text of the Hindus and are the most important source of information about the Aryans. The 4 Vedas are Rig Veda, Sama Veda, Yajur Veda and the Atharva Veda. Agriculture and cattle rearing were the main occupations of the early Vedic people. The system of education that was prevalent among the Aryans was the Gurukul system. Thank you so much.